Alrighty, and we are live. Welcome everyone to a virtual event with Buffalo Street Books. I'm Isabella, and I'm the children's bookseller. And here with two incredible authors, Jennifer Rosner and Asha Lemmie. Asha's book is 50 Words for Rain. And we're so excited to have them with us today. So the two of them are going to be in conversation with each other, and we hope that, and I've lost my audio. Okay. I see. Okay.
If I'm being heard, should I just jump in with us and we'll start our conversation? Yeah. Okay. So I'm Jennifer. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you to Buffalo Street Books for hosting us. And I'm so honored to be here with Asha Lemmie, whose beautiful book, 50 Words for Rain, has recently come out. And we thought this might be a fun event because while our books are really different, there are some shared themes in there, and thought it might be interesting to have a conversation together. So I think I'm going to sort of just kind of guide our conversation for maybe 20 minutes or so, and then open things up for questions. So maybe we can start. Asha, why don't you describe your novel in a short, in a brief way, and tell us what inspired you to write it.
Well, so my novel, 50 Words from Rain, is a coming-of-age story about a young biracial girl, Nori, struggling to survive her upbringing in post-World War II Japan. She's raised by her highly traditional grandparents who aren't very happy with the fact that she exists at all. And she is confined to an attic after her mother abandons her. And it's not until the arrival of her older half-brother, Akira, that Nori is really given a chance to experience life and hope. I think I really wanted to explore isolation in this novel, and I know that's something that you also explore. It's forced isolation on a much greater scale than what my character experiences, but it's definitely still, like a very much almost a character in the book. Ow, this idea that, I'm sorry, 1 second. I'm being attacked.
By your cat.
By a cat, yeah. I don't think he likes my description very well.
I thought it was very compelling.
Okay, why don't you pick up from there?
Sure. So, and my novel, The Yellow Bird Sings, is a story that takes place during World War II. It takes place, my story takes place in Poland. There's a Jewish mom and her daughter who are hiding in a farmer's barn for quite a long while, but the girl is a musical prodigy, and she feels music pulsing through her all the time, and she has to stay entirely silent while in the barn. So her mother, in trying to pass the minutes and hours and days, whispers a story about a brave girl and her bird who avert threats and find safety, and this bird becomes something within the daughter's imagination, and it becomes kind of like a mouthpiece, a way that she can someone else to express the music that she feels inside her. So it's that kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, so we both have these girls who are hidden for quite a long time, and it really impacts, I think, their sense of self and where they stand in the world, the sense of outsidership and why are they hidden in this way. I think it's true, you were exploring isolation, and I was really interested in the concept of hiddenness, and also in the way in which a parent would have to make their child vanish. And that's something else, the idea that a mom would have to do that, or would choose to do that, either for their safety in one way, or perhaps so that the mother can have freedom in your case. And so I wonder what drove you to write about that theme. Is there something you might want to share about that? I have a sort of specific autobiographical story about that, and I wondered what you want to say about that.
My story is a little less, strictly speaking, autobiographical. Certainly there are, I had a fairly lonely childhood. Nothing like on this scale, but one of the things I like about writing fiction is that you can kind of sprinkle in seeds of the known, and they blossom into these wonderful trees of the unknown, and they kind of take you somewhere else. And that's one thing I think is really powerful about fiction. I will never, ever write a memoir in a million years. But probably my fictional novels will continue to feature themes of isolation and otherness. So what is your story?
Well, it's actually interesting. I did write a memoir, in fact. It's called If a Tree Falls. The kind of backstory to my novel is that there's a few kind of, it depends how far back I want to go, but I didn't know I wanted to be a writer. It wasn't really in the picture for me. I was a philosophy professor, actually. And my first daughter was born deaf, and that came as a really big shock to us. We didn't expect that. And then my second daughter was also born deaf, and it turned out we had recessive genes for deafness that we didn't know about. But one of the things that happened is that as I researched our family tree, I learned of these deaf great aunts who lived in this little shtetl in Austria in the 1800s, who they tied a string from their wrist to their babies at night, so that if the baby cried at night in the darkness, they would feel the tug and wake to care for their child. And I think I realized that, this string was this innovation of hearing, of connection and mothering. And I had this kind of pang of feeling that I don't think I had that kind of string between my mother and I didn't know if I would have it with my daughters. And so that the project of the question of whether our children would hear kind of ended up getting turned on its head with whether I would hear them. And I think that, as I started to try to process their deafness, I was writing these journals, just little snippets, trying to understand. So it was the first entree into writing, and I loved the process. I found it really nourishing. And these little snippets of writing became this memoir, If a Tree Falls. And I was giving a book talk, and I was talking about how our children who have they have hearing technology, and we were encouraging them to vocalize. I was talking about how we were so happy if they ever made sound. We were really encouraging them to become speakers. And this woman in the audience told me about her childhood having to be completely silent in a shoemaker's attic during World War II with her mom in this teeny space, and that she couldn't make a sound. And I think it was like the juxtaposition of us, trying to get our children to make sound, and then hearing about this child and her mother who had to be completely silent, and thinking about what that must have been like. And I think it kind of resonated with feelings of being unheard and being quieted in some ways as a child. So it all kind of, I don't know, it is interesting how in fiction there's the psychological material that drives you to write every day. And it takes these forms that are completely fictionalized, but there's this kind of kernel of real truth, probably more so in fiction sometimes than in the memoirs you write, because you're kind of crafting the truth in the memoir, whereas in the fiction you're not crafting truth, you're crafting fiction, but the truth can then really show itself, I think.
Absolutely. That's a really interesting story.
Yeah, kind of a crazy journey to getting to this particular novel.
Very cool. Well, that's a much more coherent explanation than mine. I always kind of start babbling when people ask me where this came from, because truth be told, I don't entirely know. Perhaps I should get a therapist.
I think because of these sort of same themes kept coming up over and over, I came to sort of understand the trajectory more. I don't know. I don't think while you're writing a thing, really, you don't know what you're writing or why you're writing it, And then you later make up this story for interviewers. It's well, this is what happened,
Right, you have to. That sounds kind of better than it was 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. And I just kind of decided to put this thing on a page, but that's the answer a lot of the time. It's not really a good answer, but it's the truth.
It got you to your beautiful book. So there you go. Yeah. And I mean, let's talk about what?
When I read it as a finished product, I was kind of able to put some pieces together where maybe it felt a little disjointed before, but I also think that it's okay too for something to be just purely a whim of the imagination. I think that's fine too.
I agree with that. So tell me about it sounds like we both ended up with a lot of music in our novel. And I wondered, I think I got the idea that perhaps you had studied violin, and then the character Akira is playing violin in the novel. So you want to talk a little bit about the role of the violin in your story?
Yes, absolutely. So the violin is kind of like a bridge between Nori and her brother, and also between Nori and the outside world. I like to say that it's a bridge and it's a translator. She and her brother are extremely different, but she desperately wants to connect to him. And the way she does that is by asking him to teach her to play the violin, because that's the most important thing in his life. He doesn't care about legacy or dynasty or any of that. He just wants to play his violin. And I think that that is freedom for him. That is his own passion and his own destiny and his way out of the world that his grandmother wants for him. And I think Nori is obviously physically confined to the attic before Akira's arrival. So I think both of them are seeking a way to be free, but they're also forging, even if they don't know it, a very powerful connection with one another that kind of leads to the rest of the events in the story. You were right that I do play the violin, not very well, full disclaimer. I also studied piano and voice. I love classical music, orchestras, ballet, opera, really anything like that. Makes me extremely happy, and I'm very sad that everything's closed right now, but I have been watching a lot of operas from the Met online. You can find them and they're free, and I recommend them.
That's great. So I have a story about music too, which is that, and actually music plays a kind of connective role in my novel as well. My dad played violin every day of my childhood, and every day,
Wow.
since he was a young boy, he played every day. And I studied opera, actually. So I ended up, he and I would make music together, and it was like this one area in our lives that we really connected together. And my mother, who in some ways had trouble listening to me, I felt always did listen when I sang. And so I think I really understood from an early time the connective power of music and the transportive power of it, and wanted my character Shira to have this connective tissue with her parents, which is sort of the role the music plays, as she, especially when they get separated and she's playing, sort of hoping that she'll get heard by her mom at some point. So it's something kind of similar like that. It's interesting how, I mean, it's like we write what we know and also what we don't know. I mean, this kind of leads me into the research, because for me, I did a lot of research for this novel. It's historical fiction. In addition to going to Poland and to Tel Aviv, I worked with this masterclass violinist so that I could understand how my prodigy would learn how to practice and play, and what pieces and why. And I worked with this musicologist who helped me understand kind of the stories beneath the music, and or like how to listen in this particular way, which is very, very valuable. But I also
cool.
I also ended up randomly, ending up talking to these, like a forest tracker and a mushroom forager and all these different things, and I don't know if you had that experience, but when you're trying to get adept at, or, competent and knowledgeable enough to be able to write a novel, it seems like, I don't know, I ended up consulting with a lot of random people, all of whom were incredibly generous and, really gave of their time in this amazing way. So appreciative of them.
That's very cool. All I did was think back on my process learning the violin. And also I had this friend who was like a prodigy, and I hated her. I love her, but I was very jealous because, she would like explain things. And I was like, okay, but don't you have to practice? And she was like, no, you just do this. You just do this like this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
So I really, I think with Akira in my novel, Nori's brother being a prodigy and her being gifted, but not quite a prodigy, that was fun to try and establish that dynamic between them. I think it's a very intimate thing to learn an instrument from someone who is that gifted.
Yeah.
So when you were speaking to your master violinist, did you ever get the urge to start learning yourself?
A little. Because my dad died last year, and it was very sad. Thank you. And I ended up having his violin with me. Now we have his violin, and both my daughter and I were both thinking about taking up the violin now, kind of to keep it going, because he had played every day, and now maybe someone in our family should pick that violin up and start playing. So yeah, we've been thinking about it, but we have not yet picked up the violin. But we may.
13% of adults have started learning an instrument in quarantine.
Yes, I think now would be a good time, actually. So I can get an online teacher. Yeah.
It would be a wonderful time. I would like to get back into piano.
Yeah.
I stopped. I think I stopped too early. And so I really want to get back into it. But I have no room for a piano. So that
makes it hard. Tell me about your writing process. Like, what's your? Do you have a process, or do you just write when you are inspired? I mean, what do you do to try to keep writing?
So I'm like very much kind of someone who writes in spurts. I will write like 100 pages and I'll write nothing for weeks, and then I'll write another 100 pages. I need a lot of time for things to kind of gel in my mind and come together. And, it's like, aren't you supposed to be writing? I'm like, I am writing. You're not doing anything. When you don't understand, not doing anything is a big part of my process.
Yeah.
It's not all just sitting there and letting the words come out. I think of a character, I think of a beginning, and I think of maybe like a perspective end, like who do I want this character to become, or maybe not even who do I want them to become, who will they become if I subject them to certain events. And I kind of build the bridge from point A to point B, and then I burn it down and rebuild it and rebuild it and rebuild it. It's a lot of trial and error. Maybe you have a more efficient system. If so, please share it with me.
No, I don't think I'm very efficient. Basically, so I try to touch the writing every day, but I don't have any demands on myself. Like, I don't say I have to write some number of words or I have to sit there for this many hours. I mean, I just try to kind of stay in touch with the project, because otherwise there's just too much other stuff that gets in the way, and all of a sudden I've lost the thread. But I really am a big believer in simmering. Like, you might sort of stay in touch with it, but really the idea comes when you take a walk or you're in the shower, or stuff happens like when you're not actually directly trying to write the novel. I think that is really true for my brain, that if I'm directly staring at it, I mean, sometimes stuff will come, especially if I'm already really in it. But at times when I'm not that in and I don't have traction, then forcing it never is good. And it's better to just go sort of do something else, and then an idea might come if you're so lucky. No, efficiency hasn't been my process. I always wonder about those people who like bang out these books really fast.
I know. I hear that people were like, "Oh yeah, I wrote this in 6 months. I just made sure I wrote like 50 pages every day." I'm like,
I know.
No, I think keeping in touch with the project is really important, especially if you have a lot else going on in your life.
Yeah.
I'm kind of currently fortunate in the sense that I don't really have any other major demands on me, but writing and dealing with book stuff. I lost my day job due to the pandemic, and I just never looked for another one, because at that point the book was coming out, and so I'm in a good spot right now. I'm supposed to be working on book 2.
Yeah, I wondered if you want to, maybe we can share what our next projects are.
Okay, so am I the only one who thinks that sophomore novels are like some kind of test from hell? Like, they're so hard. It's harder than a debut in a way, because with a debut, you're kind of like, well, this probably won't work. So let me just go ahead and write what I want, And with a sophomore novel, it's like, oh, people liked the first one. Let me not screw up and disappoint them.
Yes, I know. There is a lot of pressure on the second novel. And I think it's also because like you poured a lot of your sort of, heart and like the sort of material that was pressing to come out came out in the first novel. And then it's not that we don't still have things to say or that there isn't some urge to do it, but there has been this big expression, big self-expression. And so I think it is daunting to think like, now how am I going to like harness back out another big self-expression here? Yeah. Are you able to say like even vaguely what the next novel's about? Or
so the next novel is also historical fiction. It is also about a young girl who is trying to find her space in the world and who thinks, keyword, that she has a very illustrious legacy to inherit, but she's going to have to prove it.
Interesting. Okay, so some shared connections with your other work. That's interesting. So that's why when someone asks you what your what inspired you, you're going to find that chain between all the work you're doing, just like I was saying at the beginning.
Well, I mean, by the end of it, I'm sure someone's going to do like one of those YouTube videos where they psychoanalyze.
Right, exactly.
Which I'm not looking forward to.
Yeah. You got to get the jump on that explanation before anyone else does.
I know, right?
Yeah. The thing I'm working on now is also somewhat related to the Yellowbird Sings. It takes place post-war, which I feel is very important because I had been in the sort of World War II time, and it was I needed to get out into the next chunk of years. So it starts in 46, and we switched.
Because my second one takes place kind of during the war, and my first one took place right after it ended. So we switched.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I'm working on something that came from, so for the Yellowbird Sings, I interviewed many hidden children of the Holocaust. And I interviewed this one woman who wasn't a hidden child, although she kind of hid in plain sight, actually. She was a Jew kind of hiding in a Christian village, hoping to pass. But she told me about her job after World War II, which had to do with going to families in Poland and elsewhere who were harboring Jewish children in Christian settings and trying to get them back into Jewish settings because they had lost so many Jews during the war. And I decided, this action, which was being supported by U.S. money and by many organizations, it was, it's understandable given, how devastating the war was, but from an individual perspective of each of these children, I mean, some of them had this first rupture they had to leave their family to get housed into this Christian family. And then they were really, enmeshed in the Christian family, if it may be very close. And then they were pulled out again in order to become put into a Jewish setting. So I was really interested in that. And I have like a brother and sister, actually. So that's related to yours. A brother and sister who really react very differently to what happens to them. And their relationship kind of goes through a lot as a result of it. So I'm working on that. And the thing I'm really excited about is that it's possible that in my novel where this brother and sister end up in they get illegally transported to Palestine, that they're going to end up looping back into some of the characters from the Yellowbird Sings, which I'm excited about. So that's where I am on that.
I love that. Okay, so can I have an advanced copy of this?
Yes, we should send each other our advanced work. I have a feeling yours is going faster than mine, but we'll see.
No, that would not be impossible.
I mean, if there are audience questions, we would love to take them. Isabella, I don't know if you're going to come back and help us to know what those questions are. That would be awesome. Yay.
Yes, hopefully. Okay. Okay, we're just gonna hope this works. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we do have an audience question, and this one is from Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. She is very happy to see you both here tonight. And it's a question for Asha, though I am interested in hearing Jennifer's answer to this question as well. And that is, how long did it take you to write this book? And how long did it take you to find a publisher? Which I think is always an interesting question, because I think everyone's publication journey is always different. It's always different. The amount of rejections you get, the amount of books that you've written before the one that you submit to query. So yeah, it's a very good question, Jennifer.
Well, it took me chronologically 10 years to write this book. Just about, well, oh no, not to write it. Okay. From when I wrote the first chapter to when it got published, it was 10 years. However, from working on it consistently, I would say probably it took about 2 years to finish. And it took me another 2 years of actively working towards getting it published. I remember I sent it out to 5 agents to start with, and they all said no. And then I put it away for like a year because I was really busy with work, and I just graduated from college. And but then I realized that this was a story that I really believed in, and I did some revisions, and I sent it out again. Getting published is definitely, I think, harder than people realize. There are a lot of people who would love to have books published, and there's only but so many spots realistically that publishers can accommodate. So thank you for asking. Good question.
Yeah, I interestingly, I'd say from the time I met that hidden child during that book talk for my memoir to the time that my novel got published, it was also about 10 years. Some of that is like the process of the book coming out. It just takes a long time. Although it's shorter than what it takes for your philosophy article to show up in a journal. Sometimes that itself is like 6 years. And you're like, no one cares anymore. I mean, they didn't care to begin with, but anyway, there were 5 people who cared. But with this novel, yeah, I would say it was really quite a long haul. I mean, I feel like I had so much, I did a lot of research and travel, and, we all have so much of our life also to be doing. So I have 2 children and teach philosophy as well. So, it's all kind of, stuck in these sides. And, I had an agent and publisher for my memoir, but ended up, friendly my agent and I kind of broke up, but we're friends. And I ended up getting a different agent and publisher for this novel, somewhat because of, I don't know, taste. That's a thing. When Asha was saying, I mean, there are so many people with fabulous novels in their file cabinets and in their computers, and they don't get out because of, I don't know, gatekeepers in the industry and other things, and just whatever sort of resonates with the reader you happen to send it. It's a very hard process. But I think we both probably feel really lucky. Like, I had a fabulous editor. I love the publisher. I mean, everything's gone great once it's all in place, but sometimes I think, the process can be really daunting. And, sometimes people say, what would you tell aspiring writers? And it's like, the persistence, I think, is the key thing. The fact that you went back and said, I believe in this, I'm going to rework it. The fact that you're willing to put in that energy and just keep at it is so important, because that's how it happens. Like, if you just keep at it long enough, and really keep sending it out and stuff, and try to kind of understand that it's not, it's just another person's opinion, say, if they say no, and to keep trying if you believe in it, I think you can get there that way.
Not giving up is extremely important.
Yeah, definitely. And going off of sort of finding your the home for your books. And I will say, Jennifer, that we have some of our best friends of BSB are at Flatiron. We have some we work with quite closely. But
the way that you two kind of complement each other and also flip-flop is so interesting. And what's also interesting is that Jennifer, your book came out in March, which is sort of the very beginning of the pandemic, when the world just kind of exploded. Everyone was like, we never seen anything like it, like what's going on? And now Asha, your book is coming out at a time where we're still in a pandemic, but we've kind of adjusted to it as a new normal almost. So it's kind of, so once your book came out, it's kind of like we figured out how to sort of how the book world can sort of continue to function during this time. But how has it been for you both as having books come out, especially Asha, you having a debut come out during a pandemic?
Jennifer, do you want to answer first?
Well, what I was going to say is it's true that mine came out right as things were, as the pandemic came out. And Jennifer, who asked the first question, is someone I know who really actually helped me to get my book out. She she writes about books and has a blog about books, and sort of helped me understand the entirely social media based way in which books now are getting to be known. And I'm much older than Asha, and I was, my kids were like just rolling their eyes at how I didn't know how to use Instagram. And it's like I really had to get on board with things that were somewhat foreign to me, but I did it. But I did it. I say in quotes. I'm not sure it always works out, and I have to kind of correct. But in any case, I'm somewhat on board. But I think, it was a big pivot, and like the whole industry has done it, and every person with books coming out from then on, we're doing it. I mean, I had like a couple of live events, and then it all stopped, and we had to figure out, and there were a lot of book interviewers online who helped get the word out. And there's a lot of Facebook groups and Instagram groups. And I guess that's just how it is. I mean, and then because of Zoom and other platforms like StreamYard, it's been really nice to be able to reach readers that I never really could have. Like I had a book club in New Zealand and a book club in London that I went to. And like, I couldn't have gotten to New Zealand no matter what publicity they were willing to pay for. No one was sending me there. And it was really nice to have that kind of reach, which you don't, you just would never get on your traditional book tour. So some of it has been like a silver lining, and I've really appreciated that. And like these kind of abilities to join with another author, like we got to like make this arrangement that would have been hard to figure out how to do that in person with flying over, et cetera. So it was really a great benefit of it.
Completely agree, especially with how isolated, remote, I guess, Ithaca is, and being in New York and having New York City be the primary location. That every publishing house sends their authors is definitely, it has been also the silver lining for us, being able to connect with not just authors that we wouldn't have been able to connect with, but also with readers, not just in the United States, but abroad as well, has been really incredible.
Yeah, Asha, how's it felt for you?
So I definitely think I got kind of lucky. I would not have wanted to experience being like the guinea pig debut when this whole thing started. By the time we hit, so my book came out on September 1st. So it's been out for about 6 weeks now. And I think that they kind of had a plan, which was great. I have to give a lot of credit to my publisher, Dutton. They really did a lot publicity wise. So there's already some great buzz. And then of course I was the Good Morning America book club pick. And I was the Barnes & Noble Discover pick, and I was also an Amazon Spotlight pick. So I really couldn't have asked for more. And it's just been really overwhelming, but in a good way, because I kind of went from being this kind of like introverted, like 25-year-old to being like a real author who people actually like have real questions for. And it's been a really weird time to have this happen, but I have also found some silver linings in that I have gotten to adjust to a lot of this from the comfort of my own home. And I haven't had to be going here and there and doing all of that. It's fun to get to talk to people who geographically might be out of your reach. Otherwise, I think we should keep doing this. Even when they open the world again, I definitely think this kind of thing is a good idea.
it does help with stage fright to be in your home talking about your novel rather than like standing in a public space talking about it. If for the introverted writers, you know, who know, you know, people don't often really understand how hard it is to socialize in those settings, and sometimes this kind of takes the it makes it easy.
A lot of us are not we write for a reason, you know. We're not public speakers. It's not really comfortable. So I definitely think that, you know, if you kind of had to do this, it's also nice, especially when you're talking to other authors. It's not as intimidating. But you know, I eventually realized that most people who tune into these kinds of things they love books. You know, it's like a very positive atmosphere. This is not, you know, the hot seat on 60 Minutes or anything like that. You know, there's really nothing to be afraid of. We're all book lovers here.
Yeah. So someone asked about whether we get to choose our title and or book cover, and
always different from author to author. It was so interesting as every single virtual event we do. And I find the answers so interesting to this because it differs from author to author. Some author will be like, I had no involvement whatsoever. Like, it's always up to the publisher, it's always up to the art team, the marketing team. And then some authors will say, you know, oh, I was like super fortunate to be able to be involved at every step of the way. So I always think that interrupted you, but I think that's always just such an interesting question.
Yeah. I mean, we brainstormed the title together. I had a working title, and then they were putting forward ideas, and we just kind of kept going back and forth until we like all agreed on a title. And as regards the book cover, I mean, they do say that, like, sort of, I don't know, sort of, there is this rule that the author gets control of what's inside the two covers, but the company gets the, you know, kind of control over what's outside it, including, you know, title and cover. But I don't think they want the author to not like the title or cover. I mean, you know, I think often they really want you to come to consensus. And, you know, I love both our covers, actually. We have such beautiful covers. I don't know if I hope people can see them in my little display there. I put them out, but you know, I felt like I was part of the team, able to discuss, you know, both the graphics and the title. What about you, Asha?
Well, I also had a working title that was not this title.
Yeah.
But we brainstormed this title together. And so the title basically comes from an idiom that there are 50 words to describe rain in Japanese because it rains so often in Japan. We just thought that was very poetic, and it's a great metaphor for the different kinds of adversity and struggle that Nori goes through in her life. And then the cover, so I'm not an artist at all. I can make you a stick figure. So I basically said, you know, do your thing. And this was the first thing that they ever showed me. And it was perfect right off the bat. I loved it. Everyone's loved the cover. So, yeah.
And it really matters to have a cover you love because, you know,
it does. You're going to look at the rest of your life, you know, and especially with a first book too, I think everything is a little more tender with your debut because you only get one debut.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. I think what's funny is, you know, especially because, I mean, I'm still in college, and, you know, I'm really a reader and a fan first and a bookseller second. Like in high school, you know, I was always going to BookCon, and I was just like, you know, into that, and so sort of being a part of sort of the blogging community, and sort of what's so funny to me, and also because I get this way too, is when you change a cover, like especially in a series, and then they don't match, and you have like a hardcover that has a different cover, and then the paperbacks come out with a different cover, and not just authors, but the readers will freak out.
Yeah.
I've been one of those people. Being a little older, I don't freak out as much, but I think it's just funny that that covers are so integral, not just to, you know, the story that's within the book, because, you know, a cover that, you know, maybe doesn't get the tone quite right of the book and end up doing harm, but, you know, it's always so interesting. Let's see. Okay, Jennifer has another question, and it is, did the ideas for both of your next books come to you while you were writing your current books? Like maybe they are parts of maybe there are parts of the story that you wanted to explore but didn't get to in your current book?
Yes.
You want to go? Yeah.
Yes. I definitely started thinking about the ideas for the second book while I was writing the first one. But actually, just as I was writing this, I really got the inspiration to write a protagonist who's kind of like the polar opposite of my current protagonist. In a weird way, I wanted to write about a girl who has, I guess, sort of like similar stressors and challenges, but who reacts to it in a very different way. I've always been really fascinated in the complex ways in which you can take 5 people and put them in the same situation and they will all react differently and they'll all have different effects. And so I guess I'm becoming an amateur psychologist here, in the context of my books.
Yeah. And in my case, I had met that the woman who kind of has inspired my second novel, I had heard her story while I was doing research for my first novel, and I kept thinking about her, what she had said, and I kept thinking maybe I should write a short story about this, or it kept coming up in sort of an additional separate writing life. Like I wasn't going to be able to integrate it into the novel itself, but I really couldn't let go of it either. And then when The Yellowbird Sings was done, I had like a whole different idea that I started working on for a while, and it just was not taking. Like, I think if I stick, if I return to it, and give it the time and really, really sit with it, it'll probably get traction, and maybe that will be my third novel. But this other story just kept coming and batting around, and I decided, like, let me just sit and try to work on it, and it just kind of got much more traction much more quickly. So I ended up working, that's now like in draft for the second novel. So sometimes I think it's like you have ideas, but it has to be the right time for you to kind of dig in, and you can't. So sometimes it just takes the time. It has to be the right time, I guess.
It does. I think it definitely has to be the right time. And, I think that sometimes you have to kind of let it write itself for a while before it becomes really ready to be something that you can work with.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone also wrote, does it get discouraging writing for so long? And does anyone feel rushed to get it written out? I mean, I guess I think personally, there are definitely times when, if you're on in the long form, that it can get discouraging. But I also really believe in taking the time you need to write the book as well as you can, because if you're going to put it out there, you want to feel that you did a really good job, and that you don't want to regret having rushed through and then put something out that you're not really proud of. I mean, this world can be critical, and people will, some people will love your work and some people won't, and so you need to have like a compass. You have to have your own stable sense, like a sturdy stem. And I think that comes a lot from feeling like you did the work, and that you created something that you can be proud of, and that holds you through the vicissitudes of the book world, that you should be proud of this work, that you can be proud of it. So I think taking the time really makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I definitely agree.
If you guys, if those of you watching have any more questions, continue to put them in the comments. I have a few of my own, and I'll just take over. So mainly because I'm also interested in the fact that, I'll take audience question. How much time did you spend in the book setting to do research? So how much time did you spend researching before you sat down and were like, okay, I've done enough research, I need to sit down and actually write?
For me, it wasn't like I took a period to research. I kind of did it as I was writing. I'm really fortunate to have people really close to me, and I call them my found family, who are very familiar with the setting. So I was able to draw from a lot of their personal knowledge. And then I've also been lucky enough to spend some time in Japan. I was supposed to be living there part-time right now. But unfortunately with Corona, I can't be going back and forth at the moment, and I'm still getting everything worked out with getting my apartment set up there. So I'm here stateside for now, but I can't wait to get back.
Yeah. I don't even know how to quantify these things. I did do a lot of interviewing at first and then set aside those stories because I wanted, I was hoping these hidden children who I interviewed, maybe they would write their own story. Maybe their children would write their story. So it was just steeping in stories that weren't going to be the one I was going to be writing. So I kind of steeped in that and then set them aside and then created my own story. But then after having a full draft, I went to Poland and really looked at sort of the settings of the novel, and worked with a guide who kind of was translating things that had never been put into English for me. Like while at night, while we were together, he was telling me, he was just really, because he had read the manuscript in draft, he was able to kind of talk about various things, about the novel and about history in Poland and et cetera. So it was just really helpful to get that kind of, I don't know what you'd say, like cross check on all the stuff that was happening in terms of my historical description, and then come back and kind of be immersed just in the manuscript outside of all the research again. So yeah, I think it's a process kind of in and out, I think.
Yeah, interesting. So one question that I have is mainly because I'm also interested to hear, Asha, that the fact that you were on GMA, I think is just so cool. With virtual environment, has there been what has been the most the funniest thing that's happened, or the most shocking thing that you've seen or that's taken place with having to do all of these virtual events and whatnot?
The main thing is just the terror that the internet connection is going to die, which is kind of a unique experience. But, I also, where'd you go?
It almost happened.
All the click the.
Well, it gave me a sense that I didn't necessarily have to be perfect in one take, because they were like, if you mess up or you stammer, we can edit it out. So, but she asked me 40 questions, and I had no idea which ones were actually going to be included in the interview, because obviously the interview segment itself is 3 minutes, so I didn't know how it was going to come together, and I saw it at the same time everyone else did, which was interesting. I think when you have a live face-to-face conversation, everything gets put in there, and then it's definitely a unique experience knowing that something is going to be edited. So it's more and less pressure.
On today's show, Asha got attacked by her cat. So that might count as one of the interesting online events that happens. Yeah.
He's such a monster.
So last call for audience questions as we're sort of heading into our final stretch for the event tonight. And so the questions that I always have to ask as a bookseller and that I love hearing the answers to, and I can give the answers myself too, why not? What are you currently reading right now, if anything? I know that I've heard some were having difficulty picking up a book during the times that we're in. Some people are flying through them.
Yeah, I just read Nickel Boys, which I thought was unbelievable, by Colson Whitehead. I also read The Overstory recently, which I also thought was incredible. And right now I'm reading a book that I'm supposed to blurb, so it's not out yet, but it's called Mermaid from Juju, which is it's actually really beautiful, very beautiful book coming out soon.
So the last book I read was Jennifer Rosner's book. The Yellowbird Sings, and I wasn't ready for the emotional attack. We have to have a talk. If you think that my book will pull on your heartstrings, this book, I was definitely reaching for the tissues more than once, but it was really, really beautiful, and it all felt very real, which I think is the mark of a good book. So congrats, Jen.
Thank you.
And then up next, literally sitting there forefront on my Kindle, is The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. I really want to read this book. She was also a Good Morning America pick. And I've heard phenomenal things about it, so I can't wait to read it.
I thought it was wonderful. Yeah, I mean, the beginning of the pandemic, I found reading to be really hard. Like I was in a block for a while because it was so distracting and nerve-wracking and worrying, and it was just hard to read or write. I found. I don't know how you did, Asha, but I just couldn't. I couldn't do either really for a while. All I could do is like look at the news in this like horrified way. But I think it's interesting too, like the ones that let you break out. Like I have this like love for Lily King's book Writers and Lovers because it's the book that got me out and from not reading to reading. And it's hard to know why one book will let you do that. I had picked up some others beforehand, which were terrific. I later reread them, but I started during the pandemic and just like I couldn't get in. And then like once I was reading again, I picked them up because I knew it had nothing to do with the book. It was just sort of my mind frame. And I am finding that now that we're getting closer to the election, I'm finding it hard to like sit tight as well, to just like sink into books. It's too stressful.
It's hard. And also you feel guilty because I don't know about you, but I'm supposed to be writing my second book. So every time I think about, oh, I want to read this book, I'm like, no, you can't. You have to be writing your own book. So there's a sense of guilt there, which just kind of pulls me out a little bit.
I know. I think it is hard when you're trying to write because also you're trying to keep your own voice really kind of, cordoned off from any other input. And so reading and writing is sometimes like, for me, kind of a herky-jerky thing. Like if I'm reading, my writing life's not that great. If I'm writing really well, my reading life's not that great. Yeah. I
can do it, but I try to make sure that I read things that are like so different from what I'm writing that it's not going to muddle me at all. Yeah. Like fantasy is always kind of my go-to because I love fantasy. I will never in a million years probably feel compelled to write fantasy though. So
reading fantasy books right now, and it's like YA is generally my area. I love YA fantasy, but I'm just like I do not have the skill set to
not at all
actually write something that takes place in the real world. Like I don't know. I don't have that skill set. But I don't have the skill to write historical fiction either. Like my brain does not work that way. It's incredible the way that you weave fiction with reality, and it's so incredible. And I really understand like not being able to read during and thinking that you should be doing something else when or working on something else and wanting to read a book. Whereas for me, it's almost like I have so many arcs that I go to the store that I'm like, oh, I said I'd read that. I need to read that.
Yeah. There's
an old favorite, just to like cool down.
So many books, so little time. In fact, the Good Book Fairy is here, who's a wonderful book reviewer as well. So it's nice to have her there.
I'm curious, what are some of your favorite fantasy reads, Asha?
So my all-time favorite is the Chronicles of Narnia series by C.S. Lewis. Mm-hmm. That little monster who attacked me earlier is actually named Aslan.
Oh.
Those were really important books to me, and I think that's also where I got my love for the sense that even in isolation you can carve out like this bright, expansive world. Those were my favorite, and then I don't really know if, of course, Harry Potter. I loved those books. Definitely Ravenclaw. Though my brother insists that I'm a Hufflepuff. And I will fight. And I haven't read as many of the newer fantasy series because I know that I would fall way too deep into them and then I wouldn't get anything productive done.
Yeah, usually they get to the point where there's so many books in the series and they're like 600 and 800 and 1,000 pages. Yeah. Alrighty. Let's see, do we have any more audience questions? Well, I can ask another bookish question, and then, these are not bookish, but related to physical books, I guess. And that is for readers who pick up your books and who love your books, are there obviously read both of these books. I would tell everyone to read both of these books regardless. But are there other books that you think readers who love your books would love as well?
I don't know. I mean, I think that I wouldn't name these particular just because they're World War II books, but I feel like there are some interesting. I mean, actually, you know, when we paired together, it was because it was just this interesting affinity, you know, that we definitely have shared. I don't know. There's like either shared passion or some kind of drive to understand the kind of hiddenness or outsiderness or isolation or something like that. I guess some other books that I feel like have shared kind of affinities. I don't know. I really liked The Last Train to London by Meg Waite Clayton. I found that book to be to have some, I don't know, sort of a relation. And I think The Vanishing Half is something that, Asha, you're going to love to read. It's going to like really kind of have resonance for you and for your work. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many that I loved Hamnet. I recently read Hamnet. I think it's completely different, but I feel like I felt something shared with that book. I don't know.
So that is a good question. I think if you enjoy 50 Words for Rain, you should definitely check out The Girl with the Loud Voice, which is a Latin book. It's about a young Nigerian girl who works as a servant, but she desperately wants to get an education. And I think that if you like stories about underdogs and women who are down but never out, then you should definitely check that book out.
I loved that book.
It's a great book.
That book is great to listen to, actually. Like if you can get the audio book on The Girl with the Louding Voice. It's so beautiful.
I haven't listened to the audiobook.
It's amazingly narrated. It's really amazing. Yeah. So.
Well, I think that essentially brings us to the end of our event. This was such an incredible event. Thank you both for being here so much. And just a reminder that we have both 50 Words for Rain and the Bird Sings in the physically in the store. If you want to pop by during our hours, and of course you can also order it online and have it delivered to your doorstep. But please do that. These are incredible books, and it's a way to support both authors and independent bookstores during a time when.
Very important.
And I will give a quick shout out that we have another event on Wednesday, a little bit of a different type of event, and hopefully my internet will cooperate. Talk a lot. We are doing a YA trivia event called Beyond the Ruby Veil. It's really bloody, really dark, but really great. And we're going to have 4 other YA authors join this author to play 5 rounds of YA trivia, and there will be 5 giveaways. So if you like YA or read YA or know someone who reads YA, maybe they'll be able to win some cool swag. But yes, this was such a great event, and thank you both so much for being here. And hopefully maybe we'll see you back here in the future when you have other books to talk about.
Thank you so much for having us.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.